Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and DC has surprised the world by releasing DC Unkillables, the third part, digitally, which is cool. So, for those of you guys who saw the first two parts of our Unkillables story, which really, we probably covered that a couple months ago because, you know, everything was shut down with regards to obvious reasons, we kind of had this weird scenario, right? The main the main DCeased story followed the various characters, right? Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, those kind of characters, the core of the Justice League, more or less. Unkillables answered the question of what happened to the Red Hood, right? Where's Jason Todd been all this time? And it kind of followed more of the villains and various people. Now, as we expected when it came to the DCeased line of comics, most of the characters that we were introduced to died, right? They were killed by either the anti-life equation, or I guess they were turned into monsters by the anti-life equation, or they were just outright killed. And so what we were left with was this kind of ragtag group of villains, right? You had Creeper, you had Deathstroke, you had Cheetah, you had Red Hood, you had Rose, who was Deathstroke's daughter, you had Cassandra Cain, and you have Jim Gordon, who's kind of here as the sort of rallying point. And really, he's the only true hero there. And then when we got to the last video, we essentially had this scenario where Bane, who was one of the guys who was here, was basically infected by the anti-life equation. And that's one of the worst things to have happen, right? Because while you do have people like Solomon Grundy, who's more than enough to take Bane, the reality is that Bane in and of himself is still very capable. Not only that, we ended up seeing Bane basically opening the floodgates to all these, you know, anti-life monsters that are running around here. And so what it did is where Bane was basically immediately killed by Solomon Grundy, it does leave like all these various monsters, you know, these various people coming pouring in. Now, when this happens, the initial question is, what do we do, right? Because it's a moment of panic. It's a moment of kind of shock, like, oh my God, you know, and in that moment, Solomon Grundy's response is run, right? As all these people come pouring onto him, Solomon Grundy's response is just run. Now, the cool thing is that you have Creeper who leaps in to basically help pull Solomon Grundy out of all these people. So of course, Solomon Grundy continues to survive, or that appears to be the case. And the idea of Jim Gordon is, okay, then let's basically turn this room into a kill box, right? And it's the smartest room, it's the smartest thing possible. Because the doorway is so small, only so many people can fit through, right? So by default, it really kind of thins their numbers. And this is a great opportunity for the various characters to essentially shoot them as they can. The issue is they have a couple different problems running against them. The first and most obvious is ammunition, right? How much ammo do they have to hold out? And then on top of that, just the sheer weight and the sheer pressure of all these people pushing against this doorway is going to smash down the doors. And that's why we kind of get this really cool explanation of there's only so much time that we can have here. And so essentially all they're really doing with this kill box is buying time for the kids to get out, time for everybody else to escape, and of course they'll end up following up. And the idea is to run to the two buses that are available and the Batmobile, right? You've got Red Hood basically, you know, driving this Batmobile, and then you've got Deathstroke driving one of the buses, and you've got Lady Shiva driving the other bus. And it's kind of a cool thing because as they make their way through, what ends up happening? Mirror Master shows up. And this DCeased story, and this was what's so cool about this, right? This could happen anywhere else in DC Comics, but it happened here. And it's the reason why Tom Taylor is such an amazing writer, because he's so good at taking a character and then just kind of elevating them and leaving you in this spot where you're just kind of like, man, this character's a lot cooler than I thought they were. As long as it's a window or a mirror, Mirror Master can access it. If you can see your reflection, he can pass through it. And that's exactly what happens here. He enters the rear view mirror where Slade Wilson, where Deathstroke is driving the bus. You're essentially fighting for your life, right? And like you're just fleeing for your life and you're running to like the emergency vehicles to get out of there. The last thing you're going to think about is Mirror Master could come through the rear view mirror and kill us, right? That's the last thing that you're thinking of. And that's exactly what happens, right? Mirror Master's hand comes flying through and basically swipes at Deathstroke and does manage to injure him. Jim Gordon ends up, you know, taking up the vehicle in his stead. It does result in them crashing, but like Slade Wilson heals, you know, almost immediately. And that's basically it. Like his response is, okay, Mirror Master is here, guys. Let's start knocking out the windows and all that kind of stuff. But before that can happen, Mirror Master starts popping in and out, snatching up these young kids, whisking them away in order to consume them more or less, or turn them into anti-life zombies. One of the young girls, Matilda, starts to get yanked up, and then Cheetah jumps in and basically takes out Mirror Master with a quickness. And this is what's so cool, is because when it comes to this kind of story, and we were looking at this in DC proper, right? So like basically any major DC story going on right now, Cheetah might be a little kind of wishy-washy, right? But in this DCeased landscape, there's no good guys and bad guys anymore. There's just survivors. And the more people that are living, the better of a chance they have, because there's safety in numbers. And so what their whole goal here is essentially to head to the Gotham Garden. Now, if you guys recall what the Gotham Garden is, or those of you guys who do not recall, we saw that in the DCeased story. And the Gotham Garden is essentially that giant garden that Poison Ivy built, right? Using all the various plant life and plant matter that was around there to create this indestructible fortress in this area. And so following that, you know, what you have here is literally just the Batmobile. It's just like, let's just plow through here. Let's just blast through all of this. But then suddenly an alarm kicks up, and Jason Todd picks up on the fact that it's flying low and heading straight towards them. And so the initial response of Rose is somebody's fired off a missile. What we end up finding out here, it's not a missile that's been fired off by anybody. It's Wonder Woman. And I love this because we get this amazing segment here, right? We basically see Cheetah just kind of dive in. And it's kind of nuts because you have this kind of commentary like this could have been the end, right? All of this could have been the ending of us, but it wasn't, because like Cheetah jumped in. Following Cheetah, then it was Creeper, and then it was Solomon Grundy. And these three guys just jump in and start taking it to Wonder Woman as best they can. Now, remember, she's an Amazon, right? She's on par with Superman in terms of strength, speed, durability, that kind of stuff. The best they can do is hold her off. That's the best they can do. Solomon Grundy, out of all these guys, Solomon Grundy stands the best chance of being able to do it because of just sheer brute strength. But at the end of the day, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, right? So it's easy for Wonder Woman to outthink him. That's one of the biggest disadvantages that Solomon Grundy has. And so ultimately, Slade Wilson comes up with this idea because you end up having all these guys fighting Wonder Woman, and then you've also still got that massive army of the undead. The response to Slade Wilson is, everybody get out of this first bus, go into the second, I'm gonna stay here, I'm gonna drive this thing, and I'm gonna take out all of these undead. Now, Lady Shiva's initial response is like, this is stupid, right? There's no reason for you to sacrifice your life for like one person, you know, because this idea is to go get Rose and try to save the day. The issue is that as they're transitioning, Cassandra Cain is snatched up by one of these anti-life monsters. Lady Shiva goes out in an uncharacteristic way and then basically saves her daughter. And that's kind of the cool thing, right? Because again, this whole like era of vendettas, this whole of like, you betrayed me, you left me hanging, you know, at some point in time in our past, that's gone. That doesn't exist anymore. It's just, let's just live. And that's why this story is so incredibly good, because it's like, let's just survive. That's all it really is. And so Lady Shiva and Cassandra Cain, of course, end up fighting off these armies of the undead, and it makes sense, right? Lady Shiva's the deadliest woman in the world. Cassandra Cain's not too far behind. It's awesome to see. The problem with this is that as Lady Shiva is making her way back, she's basically scratched or caught by one of these guys. She ends up managing to behead them, but now she's going to transform. And so basically saying her piece to her daughter, she ends up just ripping her own heart out, and that's basically the end of her. Now, the reason why this is important is because what it does is it gives a caveat to how to destroy people, right? How to destroy those individuals who are basically undead. You can rip their hearts out, and that's the end of them, right? You know, it's kind of a cool thing, because following that, the forces of Creeper and Solomon Grundy, they all end up being overwhelmed by Wonder Woman and literally torn apart. Cheetah's neck is broken, the Creeper's head is ripped off, and Solomon Grundy's heart is pulled out of his body, and his organs are destroyed, right? His organs are totally disrupted, and that's how Solomon Grundy can die. Solomon Grundy's organs being ripped out of his body, there's no healing factor for him. They're not going to regrow or anything like that. And it's the exact same thing with Slade Wilson, right? As Rose gets on the bus and her father basically instructs her to leave, that like you get this super amazing moment, right? Slade Wilson's like this last man standing on like this mountain of bodies, and the anti-life monsters keep coming, and he's just like swiping away and like cutting them and chopping their heads off and all that kind of stuff. And you get this really amazing moment where it's like, for a time, they thought that Slade Wilson was unkillable. No one could take him out. It's Slade Wilson at his finest, right? Just killing an army of monsters. But then out of nowhere, Wonder Woman shows up, and that's the end of Slade Wilson. Now, the cool thing is that following that, Wonder Woman ends up grabbing the bus and whisking it up into the air with the intention of dropping it. And like everybody's panicking, everybody believes they're gonna die. But the moment before it hits, they're all suddenly rescued by Mary Marvel. She comes out of nowhere. Now here's the thing, Tom Taylor is a master at this. He is a master. Like this is literally a master class in how to just surprise people, right? Because we saw that when he wrote Injustice. We've seen that with all these different stories that he wrote, that just a character comes out of nowhere and it's the last person you expect, and like the respective fan base of that character is just like, yes. That's exactly what this is, right? Like Mary Marvel just whizzes out of nowhere and saves the day. And once she basically takes out Wonder Woman, right? Like Wonder Woman's totally incapacitated by Mary Marvel. That's the end of her. Mary Marvel really just starts talking to everybody and saying like, apparently Mary Marvel was the one who saved these orphan kids in the first place and trapped Billy Batson in that room with everybody. When Billy was turned into a young kid, when he somehow reverted back, whatever the case was, Billy Batson was basically put inside that orphanage and locked in that room. And Mary Marvel didn't want Billy to become Shazam and then use his powers to terrorize the world. Now, the other question that we kind of have to ask here is, are there any other members of the Shazam family here, or is Mary the only one left? is there anybody else? And if there's not, then what it means is the totality of the power of Shazam is within Mary Marvel, right? It's not spread across anybody else. It's completely in her. There are no reinforcements coming. There's no other members of the Shazam family to save the day. So again, Mary Marvel makes quick work of Wonder Woman pretty fast, right? At the very least, you know, basically sends her out, sends her on her way. And she kind of talks about how like she's been training with this kind of ferocity, right? Like she's got this ferocity of Lady Shiva and Cassandra Cain, that she'd had enough of being scared, that normally Mary Marvel would try to be kind and she would try to be, you know, more tender in her approach in terms of how she deals with villains. In this, she just starts ripping Wonder Woman to pieces. She just takes it to her as best she can. Following that, she grabs the bus, lifts it up into the air, and basically flies it inside the Garden of Gotham, which makes a pathway for them. And as they get in there, the kind of response is, okay, be ready, Wonder Woman's going to get in here, like she's going to enter this place and she's going to start tearing things up worse than before, because now she's pissed and now she's got somebody like Mary Marvel to contend with. And the response from Poison Ivy is no, she cannot breach the garden. And the reason why is because Dr. Fate and John Constantine and Zatanna and all these guys are here, and the entire place is magically protected. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.